How's it going, everybody? So in this video, I wanted to give some practical, usable strategies for how to improve your energy throughout the day, from day to day, and make you feel absolutely awesome every single day, just to the greatest extent possible. I wanted to discuss herbs and supplements in this video because that seems to be, for one, where most people tend to look first. But before we do that, I just want to say that you're going to want to watch a lot of the other videos I'm going to be releasing about how to have more energy and address the root causes of why you don't have energy in the first place. 9 times out of 10, most people, the reason they don't have energy throughout the day is their mentality and their mindset is actually the first thing. The second thing is their diet. They're not eating a diet that actually is in alignment with their physiology feeling its best. Okay. Most people only think that they're eating a so-called healthy diet or, they're doing things right, but in reality, what they're doing is not the best thing to have the most energy throughout the day. And then obviously the other thing is things like sleep and maybe things that you're taking that you think are good for you that actually are not. But let's kind of get into herbs and supplements for the purpose of gaining energy. So first and foremost, there's two different ways that you can have, well, there's three different ways you can have more energy through herbs and supplementation. So we talked in a previous video about how food kind of breaks down and turns into energy. And I think that was a pretty basic and simple video. I wasn't really getting too sciencey and I didn't go too deep into it. There was one funny comment where someone asked me, I think about mitochondrial dysfunction or something. And I kept asking them to specify because their question by itself didn't really mean anything. They're like, "What are your what about mitochondrial dysfunction?" I'm just like, "Well, what about it? What exactly are you asking?" But anyway, yeah. So I don't even think it's productive to go that deep. But yeah, we talked about how food turns into energy. So there's a lot of supplements that you can use to provide your body with kind of like a quick burning source of energy, if that's something you're interested in. So there's things like D-ribose, which kind of breaks down and helps your body create ATP. It's a more direct source, pretty expensive though. So D-ribose. There is also, a wide variety of carbohydrate supplements. Cyclic dextrin, there is dextrose powder, maltodextrin, stuff like that. Those are mostly just fast-acting carbohydrate supplements that I don't recommend for the normal population unless you're like an athlete training back-to-back sessions for 5 or 6 hours. In that case, those can be lifesavers. Then, of course, you have things like MCT oil and C8 MCT oil, which is popularly called brain octane oil, popularized by Dave Asprey, which is better if you're on a more low-carb ketogenic style of dieting. MCT oil basically is more directly converted into ketones, and I've had great experiences with MCT oil and ketogenic diets for a long, long time. I just want to be really careful about taking too much too soon. So yeah, MCT oil and C8 MCT oil, those things are great. So these are more like physical source of energy you can consume. Obviously, everybody knows about creatine. So creatine is essentially I would call it an intermediate in the cycle producing ATP and creatine phosphate. And basically, you can think of it as providing direct energy for those types of quick burst type of energetics. And I'm going to say somewhere in the realm of 1 to 60-second range as far as energy systems are concerned. Unfortunately, most of the mainstream philosophy surrounding energy production, they kind of break down different energy systems into different kind of substrates that are burning for each, when the reality is all energy systems technically are running from the aerobic system, and the aerobic system is actually the main energy system that's fueling everything else. So there's a little caveat when, because people are kind of thinking about creatine wrong as well. But yeah, you can think of creatine as giving your body a good source of quick burning, quick acting, explosive type energy, is what you can think of it as. Now, creatine also has a lot of benefits for the brain. And a lot of people believe some of the mentally stimulating, so it's not a stimulant, but some of the energizing benefits for the brain, why it increases focus and mood and stuff, is the idea that it provides creatine to the brain to be used as energy, so to speak, to help to provide energy to the brain in a similar fashion to how it can provide benefits for physical performance. There's also obviously other benefits for creatine, like, water retention in the muscle, and a variety of other things as well. But yeah, that's the basic idea. And for me personally, I have found creatine to boost physical performance when we're talking like athletic performance pretty dramatically, but also mentally as well, improving my mood and things like that. So that's pretty interesting. So those are the physical sources of energy type supplements. And there's a lot of other ones as well, but those are kind of like the basic category ones. And I think as long as you're eating a proper diet, you shouldn't have to worry about that too much, okay? You get creatine, carnosine, all these things from meat and any kind of carbohydrate sources that you might need. You should be able to get them from things like fruit and tubers if necessary. Or if you're on a ketogenic diet or carnivore, you don't really need carbs, so don't eat them, right? Anyway, so there's that. So then, of course, on the supplement list, we have things like nutraceuticals, what I'll call them. This is the next category. Nutraceuticals are basically compounds like acetyl L-carnitine. What else? I'm going to say choline bitartate or alpha GPC and other kind of choline sources. Even things like huperzine A, I'd call them nutraceuticals. Even that's more pushing it towards pharmaceutical grade nootropics, almost, not quite. But yeah, but I'd call them all nutraceuticals, really. They're basically like amino acid supplements. So things like tyrosine, phenylalanine, and even things like, what's the other one that I'm thinking of? It's a serotonin. Never mind. That's not coming to my brain right now because I've been so far out of that world for so long. I don't really have as much retention. But like SAMe, that's basically what I was going to. Yeah, so SAMe, that I would consider that like a nutraceutical. So yeah, those things are cool, obviously. Even things like GABA, glycine, even though these are mostly amino acids or derivatives of amino acids, other things too, like magnesium, L-threonate, I would consider that a nutraceutical. It's kind of like an offshoot of like a mineral, magnesium. And its main kind of claim to fame is that it can boost brain power and stuff, right? So a lot of these things are great. I think the majority of them are not necessary, right? Nutraceuticals. They're more like, you can think of them as a pharmaceutical in a way. They can be used kind of like as complementary, like tonics almost, right? Even though they're not tonics, they're nutraceuticals. But things like acetyl L-carnitine, basically what it can do is it has a wide variety of benefits for recycling choline and increasing functions kind of associated with focus. From what I've seen, what I've felt, I believe it has some powerful benefits on dopamine, specifically helping to recycle some of those catecholamines, which a lot of people probably won't vibe with. They'll be like, where do you get that from? But yeah, it can help you feel more energized through its neurochemical benefits. A lot of that's going to be its benefits on choline, but also acetyl L-carnitine helps the body utilize fatty acids at the level of the mitochondria for energy. And I've actually found when I use acetyl-L-carnitine combined with keto adaptation, it makes like, so let's say I was eating carbs for a couple months straight and then I wanted to go keto. A lot of people, they have that, 2 to 4 week kind of keto flu adaptation period where they have low energy. For me, taking acetylcarnitine while I'm in a transition phase to a strict ketogenic diet, I've actually noticed I feel the opposite. I feel like it helps to speed up the keto adaptation process, which is interesting. Um, so that might have to do with its so-called ability to shuttle fatty acids in the mitochondria, even though that's not exactly how it's supposed to actually work. Um, Yeah, so then of course you have things like tyrosine, phenylalanine, mucuna, things that act as precursors to dopamine. So while something like acetylcarnitine does have neurochemical benefits, like its effects on choline, it also has physical benefits, like helping the body to more effectively utilize fatty acids, similar to caffeine. A precursor to dopamine, like tyrosine or phenylalanine, I would say, uh, it's mostly neurochemical energy, but we got to understand one of the main reasons people feel tired throughout the day is that either their body is releasing more serotonin because they have a low work capacity. Serotonin is, I like to think of serotonin as an antagonist of dopamine. Um, its functions are to kind of counteract what dopamine and the catecholamines tend to do. Serotonin makes you feel lethargic, unmotivated, makes you want to just, lay around, and a lot of times might make you feel depressed and nostalgic to a certain degree if you have too much circulating. And so for me, um, I believe the best way to counteract that. So when you do things like vigorous exercise, for example, a lot of vigorous exercise the reason why you feel tired afterwards is because of that serotonin being released. And so somebody who tries to do house chores or something like once a week, let's say, or they go on they have a trip coming up and they don't really have a baseline level of aerobic fitness, and then they go out on a vacation to like Vegas or something. They're going to notice they feel more sluggish and lethargic for a lot of reasons, jet lag and crap like that. But the big one is the serotonin being released in response to a low aerobic capacity. And so obviously having a high baseline level of fitness is important, but something you can do to offset the serotonin, and whether it has to do with physical fitness or not, you could be someone who just feels lethargic all day. It could be because they have too much serotonin floating around, let's put it that way. And so to counteract those feelings, using dopamine precursors, dopamine agonists, as well as things that improve the synthesis of dopamine as well. So things like green tea, epicatechin gallate, or ECGC, and let's see, what else? I'm going to say caffeine sources like yerba mate and guayusa. And I would say possibly something like theanine, maybe, but theanine's definitely not quite what we're looking for. There's a lot of compounds in green tea, such as epicatechin gallate, as well as guayusa and yerba mate, that actually have unique benefits of improving the synthesis of dopamine and improving the turnover. So a lot of neurotransmitters, you can think of it as, I don't even know how to explain this in an easy way, but depending on your enzymatic function, right? A lot of these neurotransmitters that you get from food, so like the amino acids, right? You might get tyrosine and dopamine precursors from food, but your body might be turning off the pathways of synthesizing dopamine from those amino acids, or really it turns it over too fast, where you have dopamine being produced from your food, but it comes and it leaves too fast. It doesn't stick around for too long. Let's put it that way. And so, you have these drugs that are prescribed pharmaceutically, like monoamine oxidase inhibitors, or reuptake inhibitors, right? And a lot of what those are trying to do is to keep these neurotransmitters around for longer. And so taking something like epicatechin gallate or switching over to green tea or yerba mate or guayusa for your caffeine source is a good idea because of the polyphenols and things that it contains, ECGC being one of them, that keeps those neurotransmitters around for longer. And that could be a reason why when people drink like guayusa or yerba mate or green tea or even black tea, they tend to feel less jittery, or they just feel like it's a more pleasant and long-lasting buzz. People focus too much on caffeine because that's just the way Western culture is. We're reductionists, we're extremists. We want to believe the most extreme compound is what is actually controlling all the extreme benefits. Like my last video, I mentioned, God forbid, I mentioned caffeine helping to improve physical energy. And a bunch of people are like, caffeine ruins my sleep and all this other crazy stuff. And it's like, yeah, sure, maybe. But I don't know why people are like hyper fixated on that. Because there's so many other points I'm making here and better things, And also, yeah, depending on the form you take caffeine in and also the dose, it can have a variety of different effects. People are just like, no, caffeine in any form will destroy me. It's like, okay, whatever, man. Coming from a lifelong insomniac who now drinks more caffeine than I ever have in my life, and I actually don't have insomnia anymore. Yeah, I'd say there's probably a lot more to caffeine than people are thinking. But most people, they're just brainwashed by the first fucking thing that they hear. They're like, oh, everyone tells me caffeine causes insomnia, so it has to just be caffeine. It's like, okay, maybe if you sip some green tea throughout, lots of people, especially in the East, drink green tea to get to sleep. And then, people will be like, well, if you're ADHD, then of course it'll help you calm down. It's like, no, it's not ADHD. It's just, there's something about the way you're taking it. But anyway, yeah, people aren't ready for that nuance, right? It's either eat good or bad, or evil or good. Either caffeine kills you or not, or it ruins your sleep or it does not. There's no in between. Like, okay. All right. So anyway, dopamine agonists, dopamine kind of recycling compounds. That's what I like to call them. And so other things like rhodiola, it's not the MAOI inhibition thing, but its effects on norepinephrine, it can have a similar kind of effect. Anyway, so agonists though are okay. Or not agonists, sorry, precursors. So agonists, those are things like that cause you to release dopamine. So I would say, the real scariness about dopamine boosting herbs and things like that comes from the ones that are artificially triggering your body to release more dopamine than it can produce sustainably. Okay, so if you take a precursor compound like tyrosine, like phenylalanine, like mucuna, for one, a lot of people will actually feel tired from those. For me, at first, it used to be really energizing, but now when I take dopamine precursors, it makes me sleepy. So that's an interesting thing. But yeah, for a lot of people, those are godsends. There's not really a lot of concern that needs to be had for tolerance of these compounds. Just their effects might change depending on what you have going on in your biology at the moment. But yeah, tyrosine, mucuna, phenylalanine, those could be decent strategies to kind of combat energy issues, right? Just depending on how you use them, what you really need. For me personally, these days, I think there's an even better strategy to be had. All these things we've talked about so far, the nutraceuticals, amino acids, and dopamine precursors, even the physical forms of energy. I'm not a huge fan of a lot of these things these days. I used to be, and I think that they're beneficial and can be used if used responsibly. The big things I recommend people do, though, are tonic herbs, really. So now we're going to get into the class of herbs that I think are the most beneficial, okay? And just a little caveat, things like magnesium, extra salt, a lot of the micronutrients, B vitamins and things, these could be helpful sometimes for some people. But I feel like there's too many like biohacking people that insist like everybody is deficient in magnesium and everybody needs to supplement with it, for if and or like vitamin D, everyone needs to supplement with mega doses of vitamin D, or everybody needs to take a B vitamin complex or whatever. Or they're like, if you have low energy, you're probably deficient in B vitamins. Take my supplement. And the big bone I have to pick with that is that these supplements I just mentioned, these vitamins and minerals, if you take too much when you don't need them, they can actually cause imbalances in other micronutrients. And so it's worth experimenting with. I recommend if you're going to be working with vitamins and minerals, you need to be getting blood tests. Um, but especially for B vitamins and even magnesium, I've heard some scary things about people having excess magnesium, like hypermagnesia or whatever, in their blood, and they almost died from it. So, these irresponsible biohackers and whatnot going out and telling y'all to megadose these things and whatnot. I mean, yeah, I know there's a very low risk of overdosing on magnesium. You should just shit it out, but it's just that people rely too heavily on it, and it can actually be a distraction from figuring out the root cause and figuring out better things. Okay, the same thing goes with people who obsess over candida and low testosterone, or obsess over trying to make veganism work for them, and then that's actually the cause of their problems. And people have like 30 different vitamins and supplements that they take every single day. They hardly even have enough money to buy enough food to nourish them, which is usually the cause of the problem. And then they're still like they're relying so heavily on all these supplements that they're neglecting to find was actually the cause of their energy issues. So anyway, for me, my big thing these days, how to have energy and how to be healthy and solve most of your issues is, um, keep it simple. Meat, eat your body weight in grams of protein from whole animal sources. And then if you're on a carb diet, eat fruit, eat tubers. If you're on a keto diet, then just eat a little bit of extra animal fat, like suet, basically. And then tonic herbs, I think, are very, very powerful. And also get a blood test, okay? If you have symptoms of a deficiency, don't just supplement. Get a blood test. They're easily accessible. You can order one online and just go to a lab for like $50 to $100, depending on what test it is. If you don't have blood tests and you're just assuming you're deficient, it's like trying to kill a deer by just shooting into the sky and hoping a bullet falls on it and kills it. You're just shooting bullets into the wind and hoping you hit something. Like it's just such a waste of time and energy and money that I went through forever, and just now I'm like completely disillusioned by it all. All right, so herbs. American ginseng, Asian ginseng, rhodiola, cordyceps. These are the ones I would really start with. I think a lot of people are overstimulated and they're just looking for more supplements to keep the overstimulation going. And so they'll do caffeine for a while, and then caffeine stops working. Then they'll do dopamine precursors, and then dopamine precursors don't work anymore. And then they go on phenylracetams and like huperzine A and like choline boosting things. And then that gives them a headache or gives them a really scary negative experience, and so and then they'll go on like, they'll be like, fuck it, I'm just going to do the real shit. I'm going to do Adderall now, and they get to a point where they just keep burning themselves out because they're not like, it's not a sustainable nootropic practice. And also, it's just not healthy. And they're searching for this ultimate stimulation rather than trying to build this baseline quality of peace and ease and health that is the center of well-being. And so There's a couple of ways you can do that. I think a lot of people, what they really need, and this is what really transformed me back in the day, was a real legit meditation practice first. But a lot of people, they'll think they'll think playing, playing in the garden or being in nature or playing a fucking violin is meditation. And those things can be beneficial and can bring you into a flow state, which is good, but it's not real meditation. But a real meditation practice from a real teacher, very, very profound, combined with grounding, stabilizing tonic herbs. So for me, what really helped was at first holy basil and American ginseng. This was my big combination when I first started. 2014, I was taking it. But yeah, holy basil, very, very grounding. It'll help you kind of ground down to the present moment, be at ease, and detach from a lot of your anxieties and worries. And I feel like for me, the holy basil that I was taking for the period of time helped me connect to some sort of divine grounding energy, which is amazing. But for people who don't believe in that type of crap, which is fine, it just grounds your nervous system, calms you the fuck down. Basically, GABAergenic properties you can think of, boosting GABA from different angles, and calming your ass down. So what else? Yeah, an American ginseng. I've talked about that before. I made a badass video about it a couple of weeks ago. American ginseng, if you take it at the right dose, it has a pretty. For me, it was a subtle calming and grounding energy at first that also made me feel just confident and just great. And it was like what how would I say? Like, satisfaction is how I would say. It made me feel satisfaction, pleasantness, groundedness, and subtle stimulation, like energy, all at the same time. It's like calm, but I had physical energy to go and do things, and I was motivated, but in a calm and pleasant way. Versus caffeine, it's like you're motivated in a cracked out way. This is like motivation and stimulation in like just a normal, healthy way. It was pretty badass. That's what American ginseng would do. So I think that's a good stack to start with. Just know that you'll probably be way more calm than usual. Another thing is reishi. Okay, I recommend Hyperion Herbs Reishi extract. Okay, the dual extract of the fruiting body. So the thing is, the more stimulated you are, the more burnt out you feel. And a lot of the feelings of tiredness is just a lot of stress hormones and cortisol circulating. And conversely, like these stress hormones make you feel energized, but the longer they stay in your circulation, the more tired and burnt out you feel. You just feel fried, right? But a lot of people, what they need is more restoration, more calmness. And from there, your body starts to produce, it's like the kind of energy you felt when you were younger before you started burning yourself out. And so I think things like reishi, holy basil, American ginseng can be very profound for doing so. Now, for people who are just wanting that energy and they want it now, people they just don't have, they don't have the patience to build, the calm energy the right way. I would say American ginseng, red Panax ginseng. I think rhodiola at low doses is good. And then cordyceps, which cordyceps is kind of like a more sustainable thing to take too. These are all relatively sustainable with the exception of Panax ginseng. Panax ginseng can be a little too stimulating. I think Siberian ginseng is great as well. If you kind of start with low doses of all these and you kind of titrate your way up, I think cordyceps you'd use a lot more of. I recommend Hyperion Herbs brand, obviously. It's the best. I think that these are the herbs, for me at least, that have worked the best and most profoundly. And they, over time, improve your digestion, improve your sleep, improve your focus and your quality of mind, and all of these other things as well. So, yeah. And a lot of the things so American ginseng, there's some evidence that it helps to protect dopamine receptors, and um, Panax red ginseng. Supposedly, there's this adaptive energy that these things tend to build. There's a lot of benefits. What I recommend y'all do is just read full comprehensive review articles on the subject if you really want to know the neurology. There's several books. I usually have them around my desk where you can read an entire freaking 300-page book about ginseng, and that goes into detail. There's a lot of good ones on Amazon that you can find. But yeah, ginseng is great. I would say adaptogenic herbs and tonic herbs are great. And I recommend trial and error. Like, don't be super obsessed with the reductionist. Does this like improve my choline and then on my receptor A, B, blah, blah, blah. And this could potentially burn out my heart ventricle A. Like, I used to be all about that until I started to become extremely skilled with these herbs and realize, oh shit, like the majority of the crap that, you find in these like Reddit forums and the old school biohacking forums where they get really nerdy, and even like these Ray Peat biohacking people, like the majority of it doesn't actually stack up to real life application. The fact is, you're looking for a feeling state. You're looking for a state of being. You're looking for very specific qualities to be improved. And a lot of these herbs have track records over thousands of years in traditional medicine of improving these things. And a lot of the studies on these things, they're done in petri dishes and rats, or they're only 2-week studies. They can't fund a study long enough to actually show what these herbs do over time. And so what we know about their reductionist, molecular mechanisms of action is based on isolated lung studies and crap like that. It's really hard to get a full understanding of an herb's kind of like effects or a supplement's effects or something from a lot of the research we have. That's why mainstream doctors and mainstream scientist people, they're just like, there's not any good evidence on these things, and we don't know what they do. They're not regulated by the FDA. Therefore, just screw all of them. None of them work. It's all placebo. Like, two extremes, right? The fact is, we need to take an intelligent approach, but also an intuitive approach to it. Trial and error, and using constructive kind of judgment to be like, well, rhodiola seems to work for a lot of people, and there's specific doses I need to take it at. Use the research to help you fine-tune your experiments, which you should do. But embarking on a journey of herbalism is like, or even supplements or nutraceuticals or nootropics, different herbs and things work way differently for different people. It's not as simple as just being like, Mucuna has L-Dopa in it, therefore it is a dopamine agonist, and you'll have the same side effects of pharmaceutical grade levodopa for Parkinson's patients as you would taking this tiny concentrated extract of a Mucuna bean that you can buy for $10 on Amazon. Like, be very careful. It's like, bro, like this is not the way it works. But are these people like lion's mane freaking like destroyed my testosterone? And very rarely do they have actual blood tests. And they're like, look, this one article that tested like 20 different mushrooms, it showed that they have a compound that inhibited testosterone in an isolated rooster testicle. Like, okay, bro. Anyway, leave your question, comments down below. Hopefully it's helped, and I'll talk to y'all next time.